The rivalry is back on.
Welcome back to the Cody Felger podcast, and we are celebrating another Colts victory. I think a little bit of a surprising victory, but a great victory nonetheless. Derek Larger with me as always. The Colts, Derek, get a win on Sunday Night Football. I think this is the game that was the most surprising, but pleasantly surprised. The Colts defeat the Kansas City Chiefs, the 4-0 Chiefs, heading into that game. Travel to Arrowhead, take care of business, win 19-13. The Colts really did it, Derek, by running the football and kind of having that game plan that we've seen throughout the year in their other two victories. Really, that's how they won the game. And really in that week one victory as well, or week one, it should have been a victory. That overtime loss to the Chargers. I mean, they ran the football and they ran it well. The Colts had 180 yards on the ground. Marlon Mack had 132 of those yards, a career high for him, 29 attempts after being questionable all week with that injury. Practiced on Friday and gave it a go. And, man, the Colts really – I think they really surprised a lot of people. Derek, what did you take away from this game?
Yeah, I mean, to be surprised is an understatement for me. I was so happy last night. I can't even put into words. It's kind of weird saying that we beat a team as highly talented as the Chiefs are by playing old school fashion football. It's really what it is. It was run the ball down their throats until we just couldn't stop doing it. I mean, and we're talking about it on Good Morning Football, how, you know, it makes old school football fun. I think people are actually enjoying watching the Colts just consistently get 6-yard rushes, like as if that's fun. I mean, because there's not a lot of highlights on this offense from last night. There wasn't a lot of highlights. There was just consistent running the football from a lot of different guys. Jordan Wilkins had himself a good game. Marlon Mack, of course, you know, coming off that injury, just absolutely insane what he did. Brissett got a few rushes here and there, especially that rushing touchdown in the first quarter, which came up big. Nyheim Hines had a few plays where he had some good plays there as well. I think we can both agree here that the offensive line was the MVP of this game. I mean, without them playing the way they did last night, my goodness. I mean, it's kind of funny just because of what we saw from them last week, how they just got destroyed off the ball against the Raiders. And then they just, I told you, motivation this time, and they were motivated. Quentin, Anthony Costanzo, Kelly, Glowinski, and Braden Smith all had moments where they just said, enough of this. We're just going to dominate the Kansas City run game. And they did. It was phenomenal. It was great. You could run the ball 45 times in one game. That is crazy. 45 times and get 180 yards. That's crazy. That is great numbers. You will win football games that way. Not the conventional way that we wanted to see it, but ultimately this run game and the way the offensive line plays was the main reason we won this football game.
Yeah, and you mentioned the whole old school approach to the game. I mean, look at this. The Colts had the ball for 37 minutes and 15 seconds compared to Kansas City only having it for 22 minutes and 45 seconds. And, you know, Kansas City, obviously we talked about the worst ranked run defense, and the Colts used that to their advantage and ran it down the Chiefs' throat and really just controlled the game on both sides of the ball. And we'll get to the defense in a little bit. But really, man, they just dominated. Like that whole entire offensive line from snap one to the final snap was dominating. And that's something we said that they're going to have to do, right? Especially after that kind of trap game with that Oakland game. Not to just credit Oakland, because they did have they had another victory on Sunday against the Bears, and they actually made, you know, for as bad as that defense was for the Colts a week ago, like it kind of makes you feel a little bit better that a team like the Bears defense, you know, was still struggling against Oakland.
Right.
But, you know, saying that, the Colts really just took that approach to just run it down their throats. You know, you get 4 yards a carry, you get 3 yards a carry. And it's like, oh, it's 3rd and 3. And then you pick up 2 yards, 4th and 1, you run it, you can get it every time. And Frank Reich's still perfect on the year on going forward on 4th downs because he trusts his offensive line The best offensive line in football, I think we can say, and I think they've proved it week in and week out, if not the best, one of the best.
Right.
And again, they protected the quarterback well. Jacoby Brissett was not sacked again. And it's just, man, I honestly can say, like, if last week was probably the worst loss of the Frank Reich era, I mean, this game was probably honestly one of the best, if not the best, just because what it meant, just because how little you were favored, how many players were out, how banged up you were. And to go into Arrowhead in really, really hard place to win and to just do what you did to the Chiefs. This high-powered offense who, before that, in Patrick Mahomes' career, I think their lowest scoring game was 26 points against the Cardinals. I believe it was last year. And that was the game right before they went and played the Rams and had that amazing, scored over 50 points, had that incredible offensive game. And the Colts held Patrick Mahomes and company to 13 points.
Yes.
And man, that just kind of shows you, if yesterday or if last week showed you the Colts can lose to anyone, this showed you that the Colts can beat anyone.
Yeah. And going into Arrowhead, I mean, yeah. And I'll let you finish, Cody. Go ahead.
Oh, no, you're fine. Go ahead.
Yeah. I mean, just the amazing part is too, the last time that the Colts were in Arrowhead, their season was over. That was the moment when Adam Vinatieri's slide went into emotion. He missed field goals in that game and then comes back. He's perfect on the day. And Lord knows we needed him to be, because we needed every point we could get from him in that game. And I mean, to do what they did, to be able to pull off the win in a way that we couldn't do with Andrew Luck last playoffs. Obviously, I'm not saying that, Andrew Luck couldn't have forced it, a win in this one, but I'm just saying the way we're able to win the game, the way we asserted our dominance on the O-line was so special to watch, because last year we just couldn't get anything going. This time we figured it out. And I will mention one thing before we get into other stuff. Justin Houston, that boy definitely had himself a game, and he let the Kansas City Chiefs know it. He said, This is why you shouldn't have traded me. This is why I get my sack and I get that huge fourth down tackle that pretty much sealed the game for the Indianapolis Colts at the end. So, I mean, congratulations to Justin on that. Super happy for him there. It was just so emotional given where this team was half a year ago. They were in that same exact spot fighting for something even bigger. And here they were just fighting for their pride. And they certainly won their pride back, and they won a lot more than that towards the media after this game.
Yeah, and I mean, let's be real. Last year, when you played the Chiefs in the playoffs, you got embarrassed. I mean, really, I know the Colts were still in it. There was definitely moments where they could have been back in it, but I mean, overall, it was an embarrassing game for the Colts. I think they felt embarrassed. I felt like and I think they felt like, the things that was their bread and butter last year, strong offensive line play and what have you. Like, I felt like they felt the Chiefs really took it to them and they beat them at their own game. And so it was definitely a good game for them to get back on track and get that, confidence back that we can beat any team if we really put our mind to it. We are talented enough. We can beat them. And I think that goes back, Derek, to, what Jim Irsay was saying in training camp and early on into in the off season. Obviously we know Jim Irsay is a guy who can get he's very, very passionate. And he can say some things sometimes where we're like, whoa, Jim, just take it easy a little bit. But he made the statement about how he firmly believes that this is like one of the most talented Colts squads really since, 2009 when they went to the Super Bowl. Right. I know for some people they're just like, Jim, you need to just calm down. But like, we saw it, man. And I think there's validity to that. And this was when Andrew Luck was still expected to play. A top 5 quarterback expected to play. And we saw that. We see that the Colts are built for long-term success. Yeah. I don't know if you saw Pat McAfee on his show today was really talking about that. And he said, man, the Colts can beat anybody. Chris Ballard has set this team up in a way where, they can face any team and they can run it down their throats and they can control the game.
Yep.
And he said, that's why I picked them to represent the AFC in the Super Bowl. And I was just like, whoa, maybe that's a little bit too early, Pat. But saying that, though, like, it's right. I mean, that's the formula to success. I mean, we've seen it. We've seen it in different aspects. I mean, that's how the Patriots really won the Super Bowl last year. They played good defense. You know, Tom Brady wasn't like, you know, some games he did have his games, but overall, I mean, you win in the playoffs come playoff time, not by being flashy all the time, but by running the ball, by being consistent. And, you know, we saw that, you know, even as Colts fans, we saw that back in the Manning days where, you know, the Colts were a flashy offense, and then they went and faced New England, which was a very, very good defense and very good running game. And obviously Tom Brady back in those days was more of I would say a game manager. Not that he was, I wouldn't say he's 5-6 times Super Bowl champion by this point now. But, you know, it allowed him to not have to make every play. You know what I mean? Like Peyton Manning had to make every play. If the Colts were going to win the Super Bowl, in those eras, Peyton Manning had to lead. When you're down and you need to run out the clock, you're able to do that because that's your bread and butter. And back to that Justin Houston quote that you were Justin Houston, what you were talking about with his kind of revenge game. I don't know if you saw his quote about coming back to Kansas City yesterday, but it was kind of funny to me. He said, "I'd be lying to say that there wasn't extra motivation." He said, "It's like your old girlfriend. If you get a new girlfriend, you want to show her off. To come here and get a win, it means a lot to me and to the team as well." So, even though he wouldn't say it going into that game, there was definitely, some motivation because that's the team that cut you. That's the team that said, we don't believe in you anymore. And we think we can find better options. And so it was a good revenge game for Houston. Obviously, he had a sack and that huge fourth down tackle for a loss, which was a huge play in that game. And so with that, I think we can kind of go over, unless you want to talk about the offense a little bit more.
Specifically, I had a few probably more offensive things to talk about. So I kind of mentioned it on Twitter. If anyone hasn't seen it, check it out. I kind of mentioned a couple times how, this wasn't all the offensive line here. Marlon Mack deserves a lot of credit for these runs. Obviously the offensive line did its job, but so did Marlon Mack. I mentioned how he looked a little bit Le'Veon Bell-esque last night. If you look back at the film at some of the big runs, especially the first one that he pulled off with that big 30-yard run in the first quarter that put us in position in the red zone, there was no hole to begin that run. And then he went into a gap, came back out, and shifted again, and then ended up shooting the B gap instead, which was crazy because he was originally meant to go A gap, popped back out, went to B gap. I mean, he was so patient last night. He just was patient, waiting for his offensive linemen to make holes for him, and then exploiting those, and then popping into those holes when he got them. Two things that stood out in my mind. One, it was his patience. It was amazing to see because that fourth down run, I think you might remember it, the fourth down run he had towards the end of the game, it wasn't the last fourth down that they had, but it was the second to last, where they ran an option with him out to the outside. And I think it was, I don't remember who it was that was blocking in front of him, but the offensive lineman is out there pushing a linebacker, and Marlon has his hand on his back, just pushing the offensive lineman forward and just using him as a shield. And then he almost gets dropped behind the line of scrimmage, but he is able to burst through at the last second and then get that first down. That just shows me the patience. He didn't try to force anything. He was letting his offensive line do the job and then exploiting it. And the other thing we kind of mentioned, Cody, we've mentioned this a couple times in the offseason, how Marlon Mack was never really great at breaking tackles. He had initial first contact when he hits the line of scrimmage. Well, yesterday, I don't know if you saw this, but he was breaking tackles, man. I mean, that first contact, he was getting extra yards. Those runs where he would get 6-7 yards on them, he would get hit 3 yards deep. and still just keep his feet moving, and he would get those extra yards. I'm telling you, that was the big difference in that, because especially on that first big run, he had been hit multiple times before finally breaking that hole. I mean, it was great to see Marlon Mack running with a purpose last night. He really did. And I think he was trying to show everyone again. I mean, I think the Colts knew going into this that they had a chance to exploit the Kansas City Chiefs run defense, because other than the Colts or the Chiefs running defense was the second worst in the NFL coming into tonight or Sunday night. And they definitely exploited that. And I think it was a great job by Marlon Mack, one, for his patience and being able to find the hole, and second, being able to just explode into the hole and get those extra yards.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know, Derek, that one run by Marlon Mack, it was basically, so I'm watching the play right now. Let me kind of break it down for you real fast. And it's kind of all over the internet. So if you search Marlon Mack, you'll probably be able to find it. But basically, Derek, what's happening in this is Marlon Mack, there's like two linebackers filling the gap. And Marlon Mack makes a cut left, which is just amazing. And also credit Quentin Nelson there.
Yeah,
he blocks.
He
like
blocks the defensive tackle first and then pops to the linebacker and shoves them off to the side, both of them.
Right. And so Marlon Mack I think that's something that we don't talk about enough. Marlon Mack's vision and ability to make cuts like that just make him such a special player. Like that play in particular, I can't do it justice just talking about it. You should just watch it. It's just like, holy smokes, this guy, he's something special. And I can see now why Chris Ballard drafted him. And sometimes I'm just like, man, why did he fall to the fourth round? Like, this guy is Marlon Mack a top 10 running back?
I mean, I could probably make the argument that right now he is. I mean, he is fifth in rushing yards right now, and I definitely can make the argument he's a top 10 easily.
How many yards does he have? I think he almost has 500 yards already.
I think it's like 470, I believe. 470, right. I believe.
While I pull this up, do some math for me. Do you have your calendar out?
Yeah, I got the calculator out. Yep.
Calculator. Wow, it's been one of those days, man. Okay, I'll pull up the stats here. So, yeah, he had 132 yards yesterday against Kansas City. So he has 470 yards. God, he's almost averaging 5 yards per carry. That's nuts.
That is crazy.
So 470 yards. The Colts have now played in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So 5 games. So multiply that by 3. And we'll just, obviously they'll play one more game. So we'll have a little bit over that if he keeps averaging it. But so 470 times 3, what is that?
470 times 3. It would be 1,410 yards.
Yeah. And that's in 15 games.
Yeah.
So Marlon Mack could be.
Yeah. They said he's on pace to break 1,500 yards if he keeps doing what he's doing.
And I mean, that's even with last week, only 39 yards rushing.
Yeah, right.
And he's on pace to do that. That's crazy.
I know.
And I looked yesterday, Derek, like Marlon Mack already has exceeded his 2017 rushing attempts, which, I mean, he only didn't even have 400 yards rushing that year. But through 5 games, he's already exceeded that. Well exceeded that, actually. He's over 120 yards more than that. And, yeah, man, Marlon Mack right now, is on pace for a 1,500-yard season, which, Jim Irsay said last year, we think Marlon Mack can be a 1,500-yard back. And so it's easy to see why now, because Mack has just been phenomenal so far. I knew he was kind of a game-time decision with that bum ankle. And I kind of debated yesterday. I was talking to one of my buddies who's a Colts fan up here, and I was just like, man, I was debating, should I start Mack? Because I didn't know if he was going to play at this point. This was earlier in the day on Sunday. I was like, should I start Mack? Or should I start Matt Breida? And because he was healthy and stuff. And I made the decision. I was like, you know what? If Mack's healthy, he's playing against the worst running defense in the league, I'm going to start Mack. I'm going to take a risk, because last week he kind of left me out to dry a little bit, and as far as fantasy is concerned, and it was just a bad game in general for the Colts. But I'm really glad I did, because Marlon Mack, He had a really, really good game. Like I said, career high for him, 29 attempts. And still averaged 4.6 yards per carry. So, we can talk about the defense now. We already mentioned Justin Houston, obviously. Big game for Houston and his return to Arrowhead. But really, Derek, this is something that we said, if the Colts are going to make this game close, if the Colts are going to win this game, that defensive line has to get to Patrick Mahomes, and they sure put pressure on him all night.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. The one crummy thing about the whole defensive line situation is now the news being told that Kimiko Toure is going to be out for the rest of the season with a broken ankle. So unfortunately, that's something. But hopefully we have some other defensive linemen that will step up. I think we do have a few other young guys that can step into that role. But it definitely hurts to see Toure go down like that. But in regards to yesterday's game, absolutely. The one thing that separated the Colts from the rest of the game was this. In the first two drives, Pat Mahomes was out of the pocket. When he ran out of the pocket, he was 6 of 8 for 90 yards and a touchdown running out of the pocket. That was our issue. We were playing zone and allowing Patrick Mahomes to run out and do all these things. You lose sight of where your receivers are in the zone, and he was picking apart every single spot. It looked like it was going to be one of those games. Oh, man, what are we going to do? Eberflus did the one thing that I think Colts fans were wanting him to do for a long, long time. He decided to play man. He played man coverage for the first time in a long time. And the rushing finally caught up. I think with a few of the Kansas City Chiefs linemen going down, especially late in that game, we saw their center go down. And also with Pat Mahomes kind of being on a little bit of a bum ankle himself, he wasn't really wanting to run anymore. And while he was secluded in the pocket, made it so much easier for guys like Danico Autry and Justin Houston and even Grover Stewart.
Yeah, how about Grover Stewart?
Yeah, I know. I immediately thought of Grover Stewart when I saw him, and I was like, oh, Cody's going to get a huge laugh out of that one. I was like, even Chris Collinsworth was like, Grover Stewart? Who the heck is Grover Stewart? We were like, wow. I was like, it was awesome, man. They were getting to the quarterback a lot in late in the second half, which is definitely what they needed to keep Mahomes off his game. And they constantly got pressure. Like I said, they were getting plays in the backfield as well in the run game. The Chiefs only had 52 yards running in that game. They had 36. No rushing offense at all.
Only 36.
Only 36. Okay, I don't know where I saw 52 from, but either way, I mean, that is head over heels better than what could have possibly been for as a result from last week's game against the Raiders. We definitely were a lot better there. And again, not having Darius Leonard made that even more impressive. They had Bobby Okereke played a good number of snaps. Walker was in every snap, and a bunch of other guys. Kahari Willis had himself a couple of nice tackles at the line of scrimmage that helped out as well. Again, I can't thank this defensive line enough for what they did. I know people are going to say, oh, the injuries on the offensive line for the Chiefs. I don't really care. The Colts had a lot of defensive line injuries as well. I don't want to hear anything about it. Okay. You have to rise to the occasion. And when an opportunity presented itself to gain the advantage on the Chiefs, the Colts took advantage of it.
Yeah, for sure. And also shout out, like we said, Grover Stewart for his, I don't know if that's his first sack, but definitely.
I don't think it is. I think it's his second.
Far and in between for Mr. Stewart. Shout out to Kenny Moore. He got a sack again. I mean, I know he sacked Patrick Mahomes in that playoff game as well, but a sack for Kenny Moore in that corner blitz. Man, and when you're 5'9", it's easy to get around those giant offensive linemen. That was a pretty sick move from Kenny, but
he ducked underneath the lineman. The lineman tried to lunge at him, and he ducked underneath, and the lineman just fell on his face.
Yeah.
I mean, it was hilarious. It's like, dude, I know he's faster than you, but don't lunge into him. Just stand up. Just stand up. It's not like he's going to push you back. Just stand up. But for some reason, he decided he was going to lunge at him, and he just flat out missed. It was hilarious.
Yeah, for sure.
And since we're talking about corners here, I want to give a quick shout out to Quincy Wilson in this game.
Yes.
I mean, he was tasked with the hardest task of the night, and that was guarding Travis Kelce for a good portion of that second half. The Colts did an amazing job of keeping Travis Kelce off limits in that second half. He had 3 catches, I believe, on the first drive alone against the Colts. The rest of the game, I think he had 2 receptions all the rest of the game. And in that second half, when the Chiefs got their field goal, Travis Kelce only had that 1 catch in the second half. I mean, they secluded keeping Travis Kelce from ruining the game for them. Chris Collinsworth mentioned it. He said, I was expecting Travis Kelce to just destroy the zone. But Eberflus again went to man, said, okay, we're going to let our guys just cover man-to-man. We're going to not let Pat Mahomes get these easy pick-apart zone reads. So it was great to see. I mean, we were all down on Rock Ya-Sin and on Quincy Wilson last week, right? They were playing zone. They were struggling to be in the right spot sometimes. But they played such a much better game yesterday, and it was so good to see them perform the way they did, because that was a very tough task.
Yeah, for sure. And like you mentioned, Bobby Okereke, I thought he had his best game as a pro. Really helped the Colts out, especially in pass coverage, and probably should have had his first career interception. I know
that was a total interception. Yes, that was bull crap. That was totally an interception. I don't think anyone can prove me otherwise that ball hit the ground. That definitely hit his hands. Right.
As far as clear evidence, I don't think there was clear evidence at all.
Right. And they called it a pick. So it's basically they went against their own rule. They say they let the play run out, right? They called it a pick and said that was the play on the field. You have to show the evidence to prove otherwise. If they had called it an incomplete pass at the beginning and then said that, then I would understand. But what evidence did they have to prove that it wasn't an interception? I don't understand. They went against their own logic in the way that the rule book puts it down. And then not to mention the one stupid penalty against T.Y. Hilton late in that game. That was absolutely god-awful. It was terrible. I will never understand that. Yahoo Sports even put out a headline, T.Y. Hilton gets penalized for doing nothing? I mean, literally, that's the headline. He did nothing. He stepped in the way of Tyrann Mathieu, and Mathieu pushes him. Mathieu pushed him. T.Y. just walks 3 steps to the right. Hey, I'm here. Just run me over, please. And then how? And they even had the video evidence. Frank Reich challenged that. That was obviously, that was not pass interference. Easy. And somehow, some way, Cody, this just goes to show you how broken this rule is. They need to get rid of this right now. There's nothing. This does nothing for you anymore. They said 99% of all pass interference calls that have been challenged this year have not been overturned.
Right.
What's the point in doing that if it's not going to overturn at least 30% of them? What's the point?
Yeah.
It was ridiculous. Yeah. Thankfully, that didn't cost us the game. Thankfully.
There were some questionable penalties for sure. It's just, I get where they were coming from with this rule, but it's become more and more plainly obvious that it's not working. I get it. People make mistakes, but if you're not going to actually use your rule, then what's the point of it? It's not helping anybody out. So
right. And you have the technology. It showed it. It shows everything. You have the ability to get the call right every time. And yet somehow, some way, we still come across with head scratchers every game.
Yeah. Yeah, it's something the league's going to have to look into this offseason for sure, because it's just out of control at this point.
Right. Yeah, I'm sorry I went on my little rant there. Go ahead and keep going with the defense.
No worries. But you talked about it. Rock Ya-Sin, I thought he had a pretty good game. He was tied for the league, or for the lead for the Colts defense with 6 tackles, 6 solo tackles, 6 total tackles. How about George Odom? Let's give a shout out to George Odom.
Yes.
Oh my word. There was one play where I believe it was 3rd and 20 something, 20 plus.
Yep.
and the Chiefs get a big play, right? I think I can't remember which receiver it was. I mean, they're so decimated with their receivers right now. I don't even know. But one of their receivers breaks a tackle, I think, of Khari Willis. It looks like he's going to get a first down, and then George Odom comes out of nowhere and stops him like good yards short of the first down on third down, and that's a big play because, man, that could have been a back-breaking play. You think you have the Chiefs, pretty much stopped on third down, and then they break a big play like that. But George Odom, man, he played lights out. I believe he was the free safety and starting in the place of the injured Malik Hooker. He's been working there, I believe, this offseason. And I've always been a George Odom fan. I was really surprised that he didn't get more run, and I get it, Malik Hooker was starting, but I felt like we didn't see George Odom enough in the first couple weeks there. And I mean, he's shown more and more how good of a player he is and how much he's progressed. If last night was any indication, he played really well. He led the Colts, tied with Rock Ya-Sin for 6 tackles. He also had a forced fumble, which was huge. And so he played really, really well there. And then, man, you talked about Khari Willis, like we already mentioned. Man, do you think when Clayton Geathers gets back, do you think Khari Willis will stay at that strong safety position? I think he should. Personally.
I mean, Odom and Khari Willis are given plenty of reasons why they deserve some time. Me personally, I don't think so. I think the Colts just love Clayton Geathers in as that starter, even though the evidence proves that he's not the best safety out there. But I think they just like him just because of the way he conducts himself on the field. I think that's ultimately what it is. As much as I don't like it, I think Khari Willis and George Odom both have shown that, they deserve some time here. Give them a chance here because, I mean, Clayton has – I mean, you saw it. You think Clayton Geathers was in there for that game and they would not have exposed him a little bit in that passing game? I mean, Clayton Geathers has been the worst person in our secondary this year. I mean, it was definitely a much bigger story because Khari Willis is a much bigger risk taker. George Odom definitely was in the right spots at the right time. And I definitely think they both deserve a chance to go out there and play alongside Malik Hooker when he comes back. But I just don't think that the Colts are going to do that. But one more thing here before I go. I want to give a shout out also to Kenny Moore and to Pierre Desir because both of them were injured early in that game. They both had times where they came off the field and had to deal with their little hurts, but yet they toughed it out and they came back in and they performed. I mean, I give my hats off to them. They both had their injuries, but they toughed it out and knew they couldn't just sit back and watch. And I'm so glad they did because we needed them in there.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, they are both very underrated players on this Colts defense for sure. Oh, shoot, I forgot what I was going to say. Quincy Wilson, yeah. And I think that's something that I've noticed with this Colts defense, with Matt Eberflus does, excuse me. For whatever reason, when the Colts play another team for the second time, they figure it out somehow. They figure out ways to slow down their best players. They take away those best players. Like we saw last year with Houston, DeAndre Hopkins had a pretty decent game that first outing in Lucas Oil, and then the last two, including that playoff game, he was really a non-factor.
Yeah.
And we saw it with Travis Kelce. He had 4 catches for 70 yards. He didn't really impact the game that much. I believe beyond that first drive, he didn't really do anything. And so that's something that you got to credit Matt Eberflus and his staff for doing is figure out ways to shut down your best player. And also, you mentioned with the transition from zone to more man coverage and jamming those receivers with Tyreek Hill and both Tyreek Hill and Sammy Watkins out yesterday, you felt like more confidence in being able to do that. And the fact that the Colts were able to do that and basically force Patrick Mahomes to make more of those magical plays. Obviously, he made one play that was absolutely incredible on that rollout and found a receiver in the end zone. That's just Patrick Mahomes being Patrick Mahomes. But I think it's just you don't give him those easy throws like you gave him in the AFC divisional game last year. And you force him to make more of those throws like that, more of those spectacular throws, because they're more low percentage to be completed as opposed to wide open Travis Kelce over the middle or what have you. So overall, really, really good day for the Colts. This defense really rose to the occasion, and maybe signs of things to come potentially. Last year you saw that with this Colts defense. We've all known this year, despite the numbers, we've known that this Colts defense is talented. They drafted basically the entire draft was defense. So they have talent there. But they just haven't been able to put it together. They haven't been able to be consistent over the course of an entire game. Mm-hmm. And this is really the first time, Derek, that we saw the Colts' defense win them the game, win them the game completely, because the offense was sputtering at times. Jacoby didn't have his best game, but the Colts defense held Patrick Mahomes and this dynamic Chiefs offense, the number one passing attack in the league, to 13 points. Right. And my question is this something that is going to become a trend, right? Obviously, you have 11 more games in the season. So you're not always going to have that game like you did last on Sunday against Mahomes. Mm-hmm. But can you be more consistent? Can you not allow those Raiders games to happen? Can they be more far and in between? I mean, really, the Colts were one of the worst rushing teams against the run up to that point, and then they kind of returned back to that 2018 form last night. They only allowed 32 yards rushing, like I mentioned, under 50 yards, well under 100 yards. And so it's interesting now because it's like you have a little confidence now. You feel like you can beat anybody. And will this Colts defense play with a little bit more swagger now, knowing that they can do it if they just clean up a few things? So it's going to be an interesting storyline to watch, and especially now the Colts are heading into their bye at 3-2. So you can sit on this win, let it marinate for a couple weeks. And then the Colts are obviously facing Houston in their second divisional game, battle for the AFC South, because right now the Colts and the Texans are both tied up there at a 3-2 record. And so it's going to be a very, very good game, probably the most important game so far. Obviously, that Tennessee game was big to get a win in the division. Obviously, last night was a big win. But, I mean, this is the team that we always thought, Derek, come the end of the season, near the end of the season, if you're playing Houston, you're probably playing for that AFC South title. And so it's going to be very interesting to watch this battle in a couple weeks. But the Colts are now, fortunately, with this bye, it comes at a really good time because the Colts had a few injuries. Like you mentioned, Malik Hooker wasn't out there. Darius Leonard wasn't out there, still suffering from a concussion. Obviously, T.Y. Hilton and Marlon Mack played through injuries, and so it gives them a little more time to rest up for that very, very important game against the Houston Texans. And then also you could get a guy back like Tyquan Lewis to help, unfortunately with the Kamoko Toure injury news, maybe to help you out there in the defensive line department. And so, man, it's really a good win. It gives you confidence heading into the bye that this team's going to be all right. And it's just exciting, man. It's exciting because I did not expect this. And I think we said the Colts could win and we didn't expect them to win. But we're happy to be wrong any day.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And it was nice to see, the defense and the run game when it heard change. Jacoby Brissett didn't have a great day, like you said. But he certainly didn't lose us the game. He had his one mistake with Tyrann Mathieu, obviously. But he obviously didn't lose us this game. He was very conservative, and I think that was the game plan for Frank Reich. Just wanted to keep it more in the running back's hands versus having Brissett try to do too much. And it was great to see Eberflus change the scheming of how we played. I hope that he continues to do that. If he sees that the zone's not working and he's getting picked off, then I would love to see them start going back into more man, especially when this defense starts to get more healthy. I think that's the issue right now is they're trying to play more zone because of the injuries that they're having right now. And as much as I've said it before, I don't like early bye weeks. I hate that we have a week 6 bye, but given the amount of injuries that this team has right now, it could not come at a more pivotal time than right now. Malik Hooker may be back for the game against the Texans. They said he has the possibility of that. We're almost guaranteeing that Darius Leonard's going to be back. because he was practically game time before we realized that he wasn't going to play. T.Y. Hilton and Marlon Mack are going to get time to rest up those hurts that they have right now. So they'll be at 100% probably by the time the Texans comes around, which we need T.Y. Hilton for, because T.Y. Hilton destroys the Texans. Just going to let y'all Texans fans remember that. And then just all these guys that are just hurt. It's great to have the bye week now, just to be able to get some of these guys rested up and more game planning and ready to go for when the Texans come to town. And then we can maybe pull that one off and then sit atop and first in the AFC South.
Yeah. One more stat I wanted to read with this Colts blueprint. So this is a tweet from Mike Sando. It says Sunday night marked the first time since October 2000 that an NFL team won a game with one or few explosive pass games, 10 or more explosive pass games allowed. So that basically means completions gaining 15 yards. The Colts had one such play. The Chiefs had 10 such plays. And so that kind of shows you the blueprint and the complete change of offensive philosophy from Andrew Luck now and Frank Reich in year one to Frank Reich and Jacoby Brissett and this offense in year two. And so you win in the trenches, man. That's how they do it. And that's how the Colts are planning to win and play the rest of their season. I think that's a good blueprint to win.
Yep. Same here.
Yeah. All right. And with that, I sent out a tweet yesterday, basically saying we wanted to add a special edition to this recap podcast. And so I sent out a tweet saying, are there any Colts questions that you listeners have, in light of last night's win against the Chiefs? I said, we'll read and answer them today at the podcast. So I just have a few here. So Derek, I'll just read them and then you can give your reaction. I'll give mine. And then I'll just read the next one. We just have 3 here today. So The first one comes from Casey with a K. Was that defensive masterpiece more about Eberflus having a great game plan, or has he had a good game plan most games and players just executed better?
Is it all right if I start with this one?
Yeah, take it.
I think it was, to me personally, I think it was more of Eberflus, to be completely honest. I thought that in the zone, as we mentioned earlier, how they were getting picked apart early in the game with the zone, and especially how Patrick Mahomes was getting out of the pocket, right? I think on the defensive line did their part better than that. Wasn't Eberflus there. It was just, there were a few schemes that Eberflus dug up with Kenny Moore getting that sack. But I think the D-line did a better job this time, and that wasn't Eberflus. But in regards to how we covered, switching from the zone to the man, knowing that Tyreek Hill and Sammy Watkins were not in that game for Mahomes to use, I think that Eberflus understood that we had a slight, just about as good of a speed advantage at that point as we could get, right? So I think ultimately, in my opinion, I thought it was a better call by Eberflus adjusting in this game versus his scheme working better in games past. Because I think in the games past, the zone wasn't working as much and sometimes. And I think it was better now because Eberflus decided to switch the scheme up a little bit.
Yeah, I think I agree with that in terms of, I think it's like different levels of like the defense. So like with the defensive line, with this scheme, the defensive line has to get home. They have to get to the quarterback for the scheme to work and work effectively. So I think on that end, it definitely was the players had not been executing the last few weeks, and they just really brought their game against Patrick Mahomes and company. But as far as like the coverages, specifically, kind of playing off the receivers a little bit more, not jamming the receivers at the line. I thought that the scheme was better. I liked that scheme. I liked that attacking mentality more. Kind of like how Frank Reich does it on offense, right? He's like, I'm going to force you to stop me. And he's really in that attacking mindset and I always felt like the defense was kind of like, well, we'll let them make the catch, but then, it's all about effort. It's all about speed. And last night it seemed like they were really just attacking the Chiefs. And I want to see more of that because I think when the Colts have done that, they've been very successful. But when they're allowing, players to potentially, make the catch and break tackles. Like if they're not on their A game, like it's not going to go well. And we saw that in the Raiders game. Players were just wide open. And I think that has to do with scheme a little bit, and also just everything was better executed in this game. The tackling was absolutely atrocious in the Raiders game, and they really got that better. They obviously got to the quarterback a lot more. They didn't sack Derek Carr at all in that game, but Mahomes went down 4 times. And so I think it's just a combination of things. I would say it's a little bit of both, Casey. I think it was, I would say it was a little bit of both. So, all right, this one from @Justin S. Mike. What is your prediction for the next 5 games coming off the bye? 4 out of 5 are at home. Lone road game at Injury Bird, Pittsburgh, if you're not familiar. So we obviously talked about that Houston game. What are your predictions for that game? I'll pull up the rest of the schedule here.
Yeah, so we got the Texans at home. I think given we have the bye week, right? I think we have the bye week, and then we get that extra time to plan, get healthy, kind of figure things out. I think that the Colts pulled that one off, and I think they can definitely beat the Broncos. The Broncos have not had a great pass rush all year, and especially with Bradley Chubb being gone, the Broncos beat a Chargers team that right now the Chargers look like a shell of themselves. Honestly, they played their best game of the year against the Colts, and ever since then, they have just dropped off the face of the earth. So I'm not convinced the Broncos are going to get us there, especially at home. Against Pittsburgh, that's a trap one. We got to be careful with that one, because even though the Steelers might possibly be having their 3rd string quarterback, even if it's Mason Rudolph, the Steelers can run the football, and they do have some good playmakers. I still think we go in and win this one, though. I still think we can. And then the Dolphins, I definitely think we can win that one. And then the Jaguars, we're definitely winning that one. If we don't win that one, I'm going to be very upset. And then the Jaguars, it's usually – well, here's the thing. I think Nick Foles will be back. Whether or not they play him or not, I'm not sure. The Jaguars have a very good rush defense, or pass rush, so I'm not sure on that one. But I definitely believe that the Colts over these next 5 games can win 4 games, possibly all 5 of them. Now, do I know if they're going to win 4? I don't know. We need to win at least 3 out of those. We need to at least beat the Broncos, the Steelers, and the Dolphins. Those are the 3 games that we are supposed to win. I think the Jaguars, we can win that one too. I'm not sure about the Texans. I don't know, because Texans are always difficult. But I do believe we can easily win 3, possibly 4, maybe even all 5 of them, of the next 5, given if we get healthy the way I think we will, and we get all our guys going at full pace.
Yeah, and that is something that you just don't know. But I would say the Colts need to, and we ideally would like to and should, the 2 biggest games I see here are those divisional games. You got to beat the Jaguars and you got to beat the Texans, both at home. Right. I mean, you have no excuses. I know last year with Jacksonville, it's tough to win in Jacksonville, I've noticed now. It's kind of like similar to how it seems like most years, the Patriots, I have a friend who's a Patriots fan. It seems like most years, for whatever reason, no matter how good the Patriots are, no matter how bad the Dolphins are, obviously this year was an exception.